all of a sudden someone says, "We're looking for good candidates to run for office." And I'm like, really? And they said, "Yes, would you consider it?" So, that is the one area that I really want to increase my engagement.
Hello, Beyond.The.Mic family. It's Yaya with BTM Politics, and today I am joined by a very, very special guest. I'm joined by Dr. Dana Stilley. So we're super excited, or I'm super excited to have her on. She is a legislator in Rockland County, District 17. Uh,
Correct.
and so, Dr. Stilley, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your life journey, and how you got to this position.
All right. Well, first, let me say I'm super excited to be here. And I really look forward to the time that we're going to spend together. I've had quite a journey. I attended, and this is a long time ago, I attended Brown University for my undergraduate degree, and then I received my MBA from Columbia, what was then Columbia Graduate School of Business, and I entered the workforce and spent many years working on Wall Street in various positions. When I left that, I was home for a couple of years, and then I went back to work in higher education and worked um, eventually as a higher ed administrator at a local community college here. And that was just a great time in my life because I really had the opportunity to influence students. I was on the student services side, and so that meant that I was responsible to really be sure that they had services that they needed outside of academic services. And so spent altogether at the college, I think I was there for a little over 10 years. And then when I left the college, I was really trying to figure out what my next steps were going to be. And this was COVID. So a lot of downtime, a lot of time to try to figure out what was next. And I ended up establishing a small business, which I still run, called the Stilley Agency. And my primary focus there is to help other doctoral students complete their degree. So I edit dissertations of any and every kind, and I also provide some coaching for doctoral students. Um, and then, somewhere in the midst of all of that, I've always been very involved in public service in my community, and I'd served on various boards, and I was on the local school board for a while. And then all of a sudden, someone says, "We're looking for good candidates to run for office." And I'm like, really? And they said, "Yes, would you consider it?" So, after a lot of prayer and thinking about how that would really affect my family and me, I decided, um, why not me? And decided to really make the run for county legislator. And upon entering the race, I knew that I would be the first African American woman ever elected to a county position, but not many were key to that until I got well into running. And fortunately, I was able to beat the incumbent, and now I hold the seat. I was elected in November of 2023.
I really love what you said about like the idea of like why not me. I think that's such an important because especially being Black women, maybe sometimes you grow up hearing that there are certain spaces that really just aren't meant for you, but it's like why not? Like if I feel like I'm capable to do something, like I should be able to just go for it. So I that leads perfectly into my first question. Talk to me about, I guess, your campaign trail, and then actually going into the legislative position as the first Black woman to be elected to that position. How does that feel? How does that inform the decisions you make on policy and things like that?
Oh, so that's a really great question. Well, I can remember during the campaign process, and I live in a very diverse community, although predominantly white. Um, but I can remember during the campaigning process being a little bit timid about knocking on doors, right? Because you have to meet people. And a very efficient way is to pick a neighborhood and go around and knock doors and introduce yourself and your platform, so to speak. And I can remember being very intimidated about that because who's this chick with all this crazy hair knocking on their door, right, asking them for a few minutes of their time. But as time went on and I gathered more partners, I was not doing that alone. And so it was always easier to go to a door when I had someone with me. And what was very fortunate for me during the race was people knew my name because I was serving on the school board. So it wasn't a complete, who is she, at least in terms of name recognition, right? People knew the work that I had done there. I'd served as the president, had a really great tenure in doing that work. And so that helped me, I think, tremendously to win the election. Also, it certainly didn't hurt when I could talk about my educational background, right? Because part of one of the major jobs of the legislature is budget and budget appropriation. And so I could easily say, and have said many times since, I'm the only one who is currently a member of that legislature with an MBA and or a math degree. My MBA happened to be in finance, right? So it was a lot of really learning how to share my accomplishments without sounding boastful, right? And really pointing out the differences in what I could bring to the campaign versus my opponent. And then I remember clearly, and I will always remember this, when I was preparing to make my comments the night I was installed, there were 4 new Democrats who won, giving us a supermajority, by the way. But I can remember in preparing for my speech, I needed everybody to understand that while this was historic, it was also a time that made the entire legislature better because they now have my lens, right? A lens of an African American woman that they did not have before as we move into policy making and deliberations and talking about how certain things affect one community versus another. And so I really made the point to impress upon not only the body, but everybody who's in the room that it's not really about me, it's about making the body better during the policy process.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think especially in this time, because under this administration, we've heard so many things about, DEI hires and things like
Right.
that. But there is merit and there is value that lies solely in someone's identity because of how you're approaching the world. And
Yep.
so I see that you are the vice chair of the special committee on minority and women enterprise. And I think that is very fitting, given your background, obviously, as a minority woman, but also as a business owner. So, talk
Mm-hmm.
to me a little bit about that intersection and what you've learned from being a minority business owner and how you're bringing that experience to the committee and kind of like the interplay with the intersection of your identity.
I think the one of the biggest things that I have learned is that Black women, I believe this to be true. My experience tells me that we are a little bit intimidated about taking that step into entrepreneurship, at least older generations than perhaps yours, right? I was just talking this morning with a friend of mine who said that she was trying to encourage her sister to also take that step. And her sister just seemed to be afraid, right? So I think that one of the most important things to learn is that there is support, right? Don't really think that you have to go in knowing everything because the thought of writing a business plan is intimidating. And depending upon what you do, will determine how extensive your business plan has to be, right? And then, just again, look for the support. make the adjustments as you go. My current business is not where I started when I thought about becoming an entrepreneur. Um, and just be willing to make the adjustments, be willing to give it the time that it deserves before pulling the plug, or really just saying that you can't do it. And here in the county, I feel like there's so much more work that we should be doing with the MWBE. And I think that will happen over time because, again, there's a lot of growth potential there. But I just think that for a variety of reasons, our community does not really embrace um, being an entrepreneur because it's hard. Where's your health insurance? Where's your check every 2 weeks? Especially if you're raising a family, um, it's a different world. But again, there are supports, and we have to learn how to find them and embrace them.
Exactly. And I think that's very important to like let people know that there is a community there. Because at the end of the day, like it's always easier to step into something new when you know you have that
Right.
safety net that can catch you if ever you fall. I see here that in 2017, November 16th was declared as Minority and Women Business Enterprise Awareness Day in Rockland County. So obviously this was before you were elected, but I'm seeing you guys are recognizing business owners and things like that. So that feels like very much like that kind of recognition and that kind of community that you were talking about. But what else do you think are the benefits of having a day like that besides maybe being like symbolic? Like, do you think there's like tangible benefits to having like that, or are you working more on like the policy side?
So currently, we're not working on any policy related to that, but I think that the tangible um, assets, I'm going to call them assets, that come from that are exactly what I was referencing before: finding supports, finding other people that you could possibly work together with. I think that's probably the primary benefit that I have seen so far. I mean, I'm a number cruncher. And so ultimately, I would like us to be able to say, today, September 4th, 2025, there were X number of MWBE businesses. 2 years from now, that number should be up 10%, up 15%, whatever that is, and then figure out the necessary steps and supports that the legislature could possibly help with to meet that number. We're
So,
not there yet, but we're good there.
and it's a ever changing process for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is, are there any aspects of being part of this legislative body that came as a surprise to you when you started actually getting involved with and actually like seeing the dynamics play out?
My experience sometimes was that of invisibility.
Mhm.
Right. And to some extent I get that. The majority of them have been together for the better part of 10 years. So they know each other, they joke around, there's a different camaraderie. Um, and so I found that to be a little bit challenging. And I connect that to not understanding my capabilities.
Mm.
And so I'll give you not a perfect example, but somewhat of an example. Something will come up and I would say, oh, I'd be happy to work on that or spearhead that or whatever. And the item would be redirected to someone else.
Very pertinent example, because like on the one hand, and you can tell me if this is like your has been your experience, but like for me personally, like on the one hand, maybe deep down that like you could do very well in that project, but you don't want to stir the pot too much. And then, especially now when you're compounding that with your identity as a Black woman, you don't want to come off abrasive, you don't want to come off bossy because these are things that have already been put on us, like through no fault of our own. So you don't want to be perpetuating those stereotypes. So
Right. And with the
Yeah,
understanding that I'm new,
yeah,
right? So I think I
yeah.
made the conscious decision to say year one was the learning year,
Hmm.
right? And I tend to do that anyway. I tend to really listen a lot, see the players, see the power structure,
Yeah.
kind of figure that out a little bit. Um, but then the beginning of this year, my second year, I really told myself, okay, it's time to really figure out how I could be most effective and then use my voice. Oh, use my voice. I'm here for a reason.
Yep.
Um, and so be courageous.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I really like that conversation of like the how you felt like in the actual county legislature and like global and like local legislature. Wow, I can't speak today. But I want to talk a bit about your interaction with maybe state or federal government. So this press release actually came out yesterday
Mm-hmm.
and talking about the Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed by the federal government and how it's cutting $20 million from local food assistance and how, you know, the ramifications for local government. And so you were quoted saying, by shifting the cost of SNAP onto New York State and Rockland County, the Trump administration is forcing county government to do more with less at a time when food insecurity in Rockland is going up, not down. So when people think of politics, when people think of government, their first thought is always going to be the federal level. What is the president doing? What is Congress doing? What is the Supreme Court doing? Can you speak about the interplay between local government and federal government? Are you interacting a lot with the federal government? Are your interactions with federal policy coming more so with state government? And how do you feel like your role in this legislature is sending ripples upwards, if at all?
That's a great question. Um, with this, because of the structure or my understanding of the structure of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, the federal government intends to pass down to the state a lot of um, fiscal responsibilities, right? So, in terms of the um, press conference that was held yesterday, we were talking about SNAP benefits, right? And in doing that, the state government now has a responsibility, like a 25% increase regarding their responsibility in providing SNAP benefits. Well, the state can't. That's just for one county. No, that's overall, right? The state cannot completely manage that. And so it gets passed down, in this instance, to the county. Thereby is that projected $20 million increase to the county budget, right? And so our intent yesterday was, first of all, to be sure that local constituents, residents really understand that, because I'm not sure that they do.
Mhm.
Right. Oh, SNAP benefits are going to be cut. And if you are not a recipient of SNAP benefits and your mama and your neighbor is not, you don't really you perhaps don't really pay a lot of attention to what that really means. But when you combine a cut in SNAP benefits with food insecurity overall, right, there are different pockets of people, overlapping pockets of people, I should say, right? It puts a great deal of pressure on nonprofits in the local nonprofits who provide services like food pantries and other social services. Um, Other social services. So in this instance, we're seeing this top-down, I'm going to call it crushing, avalanche, right? That's coming down to the local government, and we're down here saying, trying to swim upstream in what we consider to be what's going to be a really, really, really difficult time. And so part of what our action items were from the press release or press conference was to really get every resident to contact their state electeds and their federal electeds and push back a little bit on the state level. Please be sure when you go back to Albany that the state is really not trying to increase our local budget by $20 million, right? And then on the federal level, call our congressman and say, hey, could you reconsider the way that you're thinking about implementing this bill so that all of a sudden in October of 2026, it's not really this thing that nobody can seem to manage. And so my first year in office, there was not a lot of interaction with or thoughts about interacting or calls to act on the state and federal level, but now for sure. And I just see that continuing until we get a new person in the White House.
If at all. I'm a bit hyperbolic, but I don't know. I'm seeing the signs. People are calling me crazy right now, but we'll see. 2028. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really and it's just a it's it's just going to be so, I believe it's going to be so destructive. And while people, I think, perhaps think it's only going to mess with, again, those that are more fiscally challenged, it's not. It's going to have this ripple. And I'm not sure what the best way is to manage it. But we wanted to get a jump right on it and try to get people to understand and think about what is happening and become more engaged.
Yeah.
And if you can't, in our case, if there's no one on the ballot or the state or federal at the state or federal level this year, then start learning about who's going to be on there for 2026, right? So that we can hopefully change things a little bit.
Yeah. I want to ask about like your constituents. Like how often are they reaching out to you? How often are you guys doing like outreach programs and things like that? Like what's your relationship with your constituents?
So, that is the one area that I really want to increase my engagement with. And the current structure is that we, the legislators, have the ability to produce a newsletter, I think once or twice a year. And for some districts that works, for mine it does not. They want to know what in the world is going on. What are you doing? What legislative agenda do you have? What's happening? And so I've been working with our communications secretary to really try to build a better electronic messaging system, be it MailChimp or Constant Contact or whatever that is, so that we can really be pushing out, not Facebook, but could really be pushing out a more formalized method of communicating more frequently. Of course, a lot of the job is FaceTime, right? So several events you are requested to attend, and I make it my business to try to attend most of them, but they're not always, they don't always give an opportunity to really talk to someone and to find out, what's good for you, what's not, what would you like to see. And so I'm in the process of also scheduling, I don't want to call them meet and greets, but open office hours or something, either at the local farmers market. People can just come through and I will get to see them and have some real conversations. I think that it's so important, and we should not be having discussions with them only when asking for their vote. And then occasionally, constituents will call our office about really random problems, concerns that they have, and I do my best either to correct it or connect them with the right person who can fix that issue.
Yeah, 'cause I know with like everyday people, they sometimes in some places they find it hard to connect with their local legislators, like, or they see them as people that are kind of on a different stratosphere than them, and that they can't really access them as everyday people. So I think it's super important to, like you said, have that FaceTime and to be constantly letting them know that we're here even outside of campaign season. Because sometimes it
Right.
feels like, candidates will just be like, make all these promises and talk about all these issues while they're campaigning. But then as soon as they're in office, they kind of scale back and it feels like they're just there.
Right. Yep.
So I think that visibility is definitely important, especially, and even just to build credibility with the
Right.
people. Like, campaign season ends at some point, but you never stop trying to win that vote
Right.
for
Yep.
people.
And let people know what you're doing and find out. I mean, you could randomly be having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden a legislative answer to their problem pops into your head. For instance, if you were around many people saying, oh, this sidewalk is cracked or we need sidewalks. Oh, well, perhaps we need to budget some money for sidewalks. Right. So if you don't have your ear to the ground, you don't always know, you could be missing some very important things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So, in your, I guess we can say, what, year and a half? Math is not
Yep.
my strong
About that.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Year and a half in this position, how have you seen yourself grow as a leader, as a person, as a member
Ooh.
of Rockland County?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Have I grown? I'm how have I grown? um, I think first it takes me back to that self-awareness, some growth in my self-awareness. I am here for a reason, and find your voice and use it, right? So that's the personal, I think, growth of the self-awareness. Um, I have learned a tremendous amount about how government really works. So, and to back that up, my very, very, very first job was on Wall Street, and things happened like this.
Hmm.
Government, they happen like this. And so that is still sometimes very challenging for me. But I've had the opportunity to really meet a lot of people, and figure out the ins and outs of government. Spent some time. Um, when was that? This spring, early spring, maybe it was winter. Spent some time in Albany this year, getting to know a little bit more about the work that's done there, and meeting people and just making connections, that I think ultimately will help for however long I remain in the political atmosphere. Yep.
Maybe, hopefully, it's a long, long time.
And you know what else I really need to add? I'm no longer just me, which means, um, yes, I am a legislator, and yes, I have a personal life, but many times some people, there is no difference, right? Once you become an elected official, you really have to be mindful
Mhm.
that whether or not, even if I'm at the movies, I'm still an elected official and have to behave as such.
Yeah, that line between private
Right,
private person and public figure. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Yep.
And I imagine it's been difficult navigating that. How have you, like, do you have an opportunity to kind of step away from that? And, like, what do you do to kind of keep those
Well,
separate?
I have really learned that self care is important, and sometimes I just have to turn it all off, and escape into my world. Um, but sometimes it's very difficult because people want things when they want things.
Hmm.
Um, and I think perhaps that too is one of the biggest things that I have learned is to basically say, listen, I'm all in, but right now you are second on the list, right? I'm working for you. Sorry if that is not as fast as you would like, but please be patient with me. So I think sometimes I feel like I have, because people don't know you, right? So they come with their own ideas about how you roll or not. And I have had to say, but that's not who I am. If I make a commitment to do something, I really am going to do it. Um, Trust me on that. And uh, that is sometimes really, really challenging because people push back. Ah, well, I'm one person. And the at the this local level, the structure and support is so very different from a state level or a federal level, right? I don't have this big staff.
Mm-hmm.
I have one support person who supports me and three others, right? So it's a completely different structure that I often have had to really tell people, don't you have somebody else who can run this meeting? No, it's just me, right? And so it's all about educating folks on what we do and how we do it and the assets that we have to do it with,
Yeah.
which get mixed up.
Yeah. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really important, like just being transparent with people, because a lot of the times, like, we don't really turn to local government. We don't really
Right,
understand local government a lot. So it's important to, like, when that opportunity arises, be like, these are our capabilities, but these are also our limits. And I think that's also a huge
right.
part in building trust with the people that elected you. And my last question to you is there anything that you're very excited about in the future? Anything that I haven't asked you about that you think is worth mentioning now?
What am I really excited about in the future? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Oh, there is something. I am going to soon pass my very first piece of legislation. Woo-hoo-hoo, right?
Super exciting.
Sponsored by me, should come in the next, I'm going to stretch it out, before the end of this year, for sure. But that is super, super, super exciting to me because that's part of the policy. That's part of the job,
Yeah.
right? To be able to legislate, create policy. And so I'm really, really excited about that. I won't share any more.
Okay.
Um,
Keep it under wraps.
but that's the biggest thing because again, that will be a huge accomplishment, right? Very frequently we are making budget appropriations more than anything else, right? Um, but to actually be able to bring forth and pass some legislation is huge, and so I'm excited about that.
Well,
Yep.
I will definitely be keeping an eye out. And to all my viewers, I encourage you guys to also be keeping an eye out. Regardless of where you live, local politics is oh so important, and we do not talk about that enough. So, Dr. Stilley, thank you so much for joining me today. This was an excellent conversation. I'm super happy to have gotten to talk to you and get this insight in local government. So, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on here.
you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Of course. Thank you. Well, that is all for today. BTN Politics. As you all know, make sure to check out Beyond.The.Mic Sports and Entertainment for all your entertainment and sports needs. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you for tuning in.